There was a research paper that came out in either 2022 or 2023. It was in Japan, and it was on GLP-1. So if you take a GLP-1, you might want to listen to this, and if you don't and you don't care, you can just scroll. So the study was, what they did was they took mice, which is what we do in research, is because you can't always do research on humans, or you can't look at certain things in humans. Like, we're not going to look at a brain, damage to a brain on certain drugs, or you can't really look at the small intestines, and that's actually what this study was. So we use mice because they have much shorter life than humans do, so you can kind of see, and they're similar. So you can kind of see, because they have a short life, what might happen in humans. And we hear all the positive things about GLP-1s. They lower heart disease and comorbidities, and they have all these health benefits. And the American Heart Association came out and said that they prevent heart disease, or help prevent and lower risk. Keep in mind that all of that data is on diabetics. That's not data with somebody like me, or a lot of people that I see taking it that need to lose like 20 to 40 pounds. Those studies weren't on people like us. Those are people that have diabetes. Like, my dad takes it. He's a diabetic. He's been a diabetic for 15 years probably. So there's a huge difference. But I'm digressing, because in this study, what happened was the people that were on a GLP-1 of 2.5 or higher for, it was either 2 years or 1.6 years, so almost 2 years, but I'm thinking it was 2 years. And I saved the study, but I don't have it in front of me. But the gist of the study is that it elongated the small intestine, and it made the small intestine less elastic. So the small intestine is kind of wavy like this, and you want it to be that way to kind of push things through. So with the GLP-1, it becomes elongated and less elastic. Now, possibly because it's becoming less elastic, it doesn't have this groove, so it's just straighter, which could be the reason why it's longer. They don't really know. And they can't measure this in humans, because you can't look at a small intestine of a human being. But one of the things that happened to the mice was that they were getting bowel obstructions. And bowel obstruction can be fatal. I mean, you may not recover from a bowel obstruction. So it's just something to think about. I think that with the GLP-1s, everybody thinks, oh, it's this magical drug. And for a lot of people, it might be. For somebody who's like 400 pounds, or, has there's so many different factors that go into it, and you have to weigh risk and benefit. But we know from the research that it doubles the risk of depression. It triples the risk of anxiety, or incidence of anxiety. It doubles the rate of suicidal ideation, which to me is terrifying. Like, I see people on that, and I think so many people struggle with depression anyway. We know that they do. So, to put somebody on those drugs and then double that risk is crazy. Like, we really need to be looking at who we're putting on these drugs, and they need to be monitored, like really, really monitored. And then it also doubled the rate of blindness. And I talked to a ton of people myself who have taken the drug, and they just had to stop taking it because they had so many stomach issues. And then, of course, the gastroparesis, where your stomach is just paralyzed. That's another thing. Gastritis. What is the other one? Begins with a P. I can't think of it. Pancreatitis. I mean, that can be fatal. I knew a friend of mine that almost died when she had that, not from GLP-1. Actually, my son's a person he went to high school with. It was their mom. I didn't really know her like super well, but she told me, she had it and she almost passed away. So it was very frightening for her. It's just, and then like eating disorders, and I've said this from the beginning, somebody who has had an eating disorder, I have had an eating disorder. I was hospitalized twice for months, once in high school and once in college. And I had anorexia. And then when I went to the hospital the first time, and I was in there, for a while, I just learned from other people that were in there that had anorexia. And I don't even know what bulimia was when I went in there, but I learned what it was when I was in there. So the second time I had anorexia and bulimia, I would just kind of go back and forth. And that was in college. And so for me, like the thought of taking something that makes me not want to eat, honestly, it's terrifying to me. So just because I know that ledge that I can drop off of. And I know that, if I went a couple days without eating, well, then maybe I could just go another day, because it's, anorexia is about control, and bulimia is about like you're trying to like hurt yourself. And honestly, what I learned in therapy was years and years of therapy, that with anorexia, you want to disappear. That's why the scale never goes low enough, because you're basically wanting to end your life. So it's just like a self-destructive path. And I'm very lucky that I was able to recover. Not everybody was that lucky. And, I met like lifelong like friends that I just adore. But, some of them weren't as lucky as me, and some of them never get over it. So I think that that's really something that if you're thinking about taking that drug, or if you're on that drug right now and that's something that you're struggling with, get help. It's not worth, nothing's worth your health. Like, health is wealth. And again, I think there are instances where there are going to be some people that it's the right fit. And I'm not judging. I'm not being judgy. I mean, I don't want anybody to judge me, and I'm not judging anybody that's on it. I'm just saying that please be careful. We don't know all the long-term effects. Yeah, we've used it for a long time in diabetics. I think the biggest problem with it is that where people don't want to eat, and it doesn't matter how much you work out. If you work out and you're really skinny, yeah, we're going to see all your muscles because there's no fat over it. But how much muscle mass do you actually have? And bone mass. Like, you don't want to lose your muscle. That's your longevity. That's your longevity, your muscle. Your glutes, your hamstrings, those important muscles, and you don't want to lose those. It's not worth it. So, if you're just taking it as a crutch because it's easier, because you don't, and then some people say, oh, well, I have food noise. Who the heck doesn't have food noise? I mean, like, literally, when I go to bed, I'm thinking, wonder what I'll eat tomorrow. Or if I'm, it's 12 o'clock, I'm like, what are we going for dinner tonight? And then sometimes I'm on the couch at night and I'm just like, I'm freaking hungry. I want to go get some chocolate. But I don't, because sometimes I do. I'll say sometimes I do. But I mean, like, I don't do that every time, and I have to limit myself because it's about discipline. So if you use it in that 0.5 to 1 dose for 90 days, which is what the researchers that I've looked at say is the safe way to do it, and then you change your habits, and then we just get off, and you improve your habits, and then if you need to get back on it, you go back on it later and, try to get back into those habits and get off. So I don't know. It's just something to think about. There's lots of things I think that we're going to learn as we go. And unfortunately, there are going to be some people that are kind of like a byproduct of what we didn't know. But just be careful, especially, with depression, anxiety, the suicide stuff. Be careful. Anyway, love you guys. Bye.